some questions. So I hold the microphone. They have their own microphones. We'll turn those on. If you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll bring the microphone down to you. Oh, I have an extra one down there, too. So if you would, just please stand if you have a question, state your first name, and then who you would like to direct the question to. Go ahead.
My name is Pam. My name is Pam. I'm not sure exactly who would answer this question, and forgive my ignorance on this, but every time the state government talks about taking federal funds, how do we prevent the federal government to even have these funds to begin with? I mean, I understand the government is in debt, they don't have the money, and yet I still hear legislators, even in the state, say we're getting this free money. How do we stop the government from either having this money or making others understand that there is no such thing as free money?
Well, which came first, the chicken or the egg? One of the big problems with that is that Congress feels, or is of the view, that it can print as much money as possible, and so it does that, and devalues the dollar, and so it's a runaway system. Senator Ligon talked about the 17th Amendment as making having a hand in making Congress unaccountable. Back in that same era, the federal government started taking us off the gold standard, which had the effect of causing the Congress to realize that for every dollar it borrowed, it had to repay that dollar with the same value. That acted as a force to keep Congress from spending money. Now we're completely off the gold standard, and Congress is of that view, so that's a huge problem.
Senator?
Just from my experience at the state level, you're right. A lot of the focus is we're getting this free money. And there's not much consideration given to all of the strings and the requirements that come with that. We need to change that by going to our state elected officials and insisting that they start looking into all of the conditions that come with the grants and start rejecting them. That is, I think, a practical, workable approach. The states are under a lot of pressure because many of them are strapped with cash and have been strapped. But when you pay such a high federal tax, then you don't have any room to maneuver. And so, but maybe one way to break the cycle is to stop taking that money.
Just to add on what the senator said, I think a lot of the state executives, the agencies, and the governors are afraid that there will be a backlash if they refuse the federal dollar. And I think we need to reverse that and make them realize there will be a backlash if they take the federal dollar, and they'll receive greater claim if they refuse the federal dollar.
And then what happens too is you receive this grant, and then the grant money runs out, but your state is still left with this program, which is continuing to cost you money. And so we need to look at the long-term cost and encourage our legislators to do that. Look at the long-term cost of taking this.
On that point, Aaron Tuttle later on is going to talk about how the the state education budgets rose with the stimulus bill, and they stayed up at that level.
Very good, thank you, Pam. We have another question right over here.
I don't want to belabor this. My name is Warren. I implore everybody in this room to take a look at their dollar bills in their wallet and realize that we do not own the money. It's simply a loan from the Fed, Federal Reserve. So I think that education level would help people understand even the money we carry in our wallet is a loan.
Very good, thank you, Warren. And we have one more question right up here. Once again, name and if you you directly into one of the panelists.
Yeah, my name's Joe, and both hit the senator first. Do you folks in Georgia opt out successfully of the, I don't know if it's partners in order balance, whatever the assessment was that was in Georgia? And if not, what is the process that you think is best to get that out? Because we have an issue here in New Hampshire. And the follow-up to that is, how are we going to get my senator, Senator Ayotte, kind of opts out and says you need to get an attorney general to sue the government to turn this whole process around. How do we get a state attorney general that's enough to go to the summer?
Are you talking about the park testing?
Well, yeah, I know Georgia was looking to opt out.
We opted out.
You opted out. Now, was that legislature or was that Department of Education?
Well, we opted out about the time the bill was dropped to get us out of the Common Core altogether. And there was a review by the state school superintendent and the governor's office, and they opted out by executive order. So.
Emmett, anything additional to add to that?
Oh, the Attorney General. Yeah, I mean, on the education fights, the Attorney Generals have been particularly lacking in courage to stand by the people. And I think they have to be treated just like these presidential candidates that are coming through, and all elected officials. The most powerful thing, I think, with the elected officials is to meet with them, to talk to them, and put the questions directly to them. And you may not get a good answer then, but if 4 or 5 people do that over the course of a couple of months, it'll start affecting the way they think. This is far more powerful, in my view, than having the money to run commercials or do mass mailings. We've lost that art in America. The idea of going in and directly meeting with your senators and representatives and governors. I think the Common Core fight is re-inspiring that practice. And if you look state after state after state, what's happening are these mostly moms who set what's coming home in the children's backpacks, and they're going into the state houses and they're meeting with the senators, representatives, and governors, and they're demanding that they be taken out of it. It's tremendously instructional and inspiring. And we're hearing feedback from senators and representatives that it's been years and years since they've seen this in the State House. That the people down in the State House now are mostly hired lobbyists, not the citizen. So I think that's what has to happen. Start having to go in and start talking to the Attorney General and demanding that they take action.
Yeah, no mother wants to face the wrath. I mean, no politician wants to face the wrath of an angry mother. So, one last question.
For 20 years, I've gone to conferences like this and have asked speakers like yourselves to say, just bottom line, what is it that we do? And this response has been very similar. Get involved and let like-minded people who go in and represent you. And so far, that hasn't mattered one iota. It hasn't changed anything. We certainly haven't improved our situation. I personally have the opinion that the Republic is lost. I don't think that's coming back. And so I ask you, what about something really drastic? Like, what's wrong with all the organizations in this room promoting the idea that we close Washington? We just close it and send everybody home, work from your home state, and you go down there for 3 months a year to vote on legislation. But with all of the technology we have at our disposal, I just see no reason why they have to spend the majority of their time in D.C., where they have Republicans and Democrats alike, and you have to see this better than anybody in this room, what a cesspool that's become. And they have totally lost any connection with their constituents because they think that we're, I don't know if superficial is the word, that we really, they know so much more because they've got so much more information. So they really don't care what we think.
Right, I think there's a question there. So how do you think?
But what about that? What about closing, advocating that, and would that help keep people in their districts to really listen to us?
I think what you said there at the end, they've lost their connection with the people, though, and the way to get them reconnected with the people is to get people going into the state houses and talking to them. And when people are running for president, they're coming in here, you go as an informed citizen and drill them on the issues and drill them on federalism. All these issues are connected. You've been in office for X number of years. What have you done to stand at the constitutional line? What have you done on Medicaid, on Common Core, on testing and data collection? But we've seen that have a tremendous effect on the Common Core fight. And it's not a fight that has won yet, but it is making tremendous progress in state after state after state. And Anne-Marie Banfield can talk about this, what she's done here in New Hampshire. But understand what these moms have done. And in pretty much every state, it was started by one or two moms who kickstarted the issue. What they've done is they've taken on a $600 billion a year K-12 public education industry. They've taken on the elitists in both parties, Democrat and Republican. They've taken on huge special interest groups in Washington, D.C., and they've turned the tide. I mean, education is now, for the first time in 20 years, it's a national issue. It's a national issue on the conservative side. Once more, we're hearing calls on let's get rid of the U.S. Department of Education. This election cycle, I think most Republican candidates are going to say, yes, I agree with that. And the ones who say I disagree with it, they're not going to make it through Iowa, they're not going to make it through New Hampshire, they're not going to make it through South Carolina. This is a sea change.
Senator, do you think there's any merit to that idea of Washington?
Well, sometimes I do think there is merit to the idea, but I don't know that practically you could do it, because there are legitimate functions for the federal government, and you just can't make it go away. But at the same time, I agree with Emmett. You do have tremendous influence. And I know you've worked more, and we get tired. But even though we get tired, we can't quit. And we need to work on continuing to build our grassroots coalitions, because that's how we will influence elections. We will elect people who will agree with our perspective and our point of view. You can't quit. I can tell you as a legislator that when I start getting hundreds of emails and letters and phone calls on a particular issue, it gets my attention. I mean, it has an effect, and you feel that pressure. I don't think that we've really, over the course of time, I think we kind of got lazy in the sense that we were working and living our lives and